William Will Johannes Cornelius Matthysen, December 13, 1954 to December 31, 2025. Obituary. William Matthysen died suddenly and unexpectedly on New Year's Eve 2025 on Raymond Island. He had just turned 71 years old. He was very much loved and is sadly missed by his wife, Marion Katwit, and their two sons, Nicholas and Daniel Matthysen, and their partners Sarah McKenna and Laura Yates, and grandchildren Thomas, Zach, Asher, and Isabel Matthysen. Will was born in Brakpan, South Africa, in the province then known as Transvaal. He was the youngest of 5 siblings. His parents were Helena Dingelstad and Cornelius Matthysen, who had migrated from the Netherlands to South Africa in the 1930s. She was a nurse and he was a carpenter. Will often described aspects of growing up in South Africa. Enjoyable things such as family holidays to Mozambique or the Kruger National Park. Going on camping and fishing trips. More challenging was his very strict school and being conscripted for a year in the South African Army in Namibia. He never forgot the grueling pack marches up and down Dune 7. Will started a Bachelor of Science at the University of Witwatersrand in Johannesburg before switching to architecture. He was described by one of his professors as a most imaginative and hard-working student. These attributes never left him. Although his years at Witwatersrand were formative, enjoyable and challenging, South Africa was not the place where Will wanted to spend the rest of his life. He left the country in 1977 and spent 18 months in the Netherlands, working for an architecture firm in Leiden. He then moved to London in 1979 to complete his degree at the Architectural Association. Will and Marjan met in 1982 when he moved into a shared house in London with Marjan's friends. At the time, Will worked for Norman Foster and Associates. After a memorable Halloween party, they decided they really quite liked each other, and 6 months later they moved to Hong Kong. Will was part of the Foster's team that designed and built the new Hong Kong and Shanghai Bank headquarters. This was a great adventure and a high point in Will's architectural career. Will and Marjan were married in Hong Kong Registry Office in November 1983. The move to Australia occurred in 1986. Will was sponsored by a developer in Richmond, and Marjan found work in the jewellery trade. They bought their first house in Fairfield, where Nicholas was born in 1989 and Daniel in 1991. Will built his first shed and commenced designing and making clocks in his spare time. He became an Australian citizen in 1988 and completed his Master of Urban Design at RMIT in 1992. Will demonstrated his interest in art and crafts from a very young age. He used to be allowed into his dad's workshop where he learnt woodworking skills. And he was always fascinated by mechanical things, being especially intrigued by clocks. In his words, "It appeared to me that clocks possessed a magic of their own." As a young boy, he took the family's mantel clock apart and managed to put it back together again. He built his first clock from scratch as a teenager. During the recession of the late 1980s, Will was made redundant. As it happened, this was a blessing in disguise. It presented the opportunity to pursue his lifelong interest in designing and making clocks. For the next 5 years, Will built mechanical clocks in this workshop, supplementing his income with contractual architectural work, and as a design tutor at RMIT and Melbourne University. Although he already possessed a good knowledge of clockmaking and woodworking, Will enrolled in the RMIT Clock and Watchmaking Apprenticeship course, and after that he completed the Associate Diploma of Arts, Wood Design, at Box Hill TAFE. He continued to further his theoretical knowledge of clock design and manufacture by reading any book or magazine relating to clocks and watches that he could get his hands on. Will was a compulsive designer, always sketching on whatever piece of paper was at hand. This combination of design skills, meticulous craftsmanship, and thorough knowledge of the different clock movements led to the production of so many beautiful timepieces. Will first exhibited 3 of his early clocks at the Timber and Working with Wood show at the Exhibition Buildings in Melbourne in 1991 and never looked back. By 1995, the Fairfield shed, despite 2 extensions, was too small. The family moved to Warrandyte, where Will built a bigger and better shed. He produced a total of 215 mechanical clocks, ranging from smaller mantle clocks to large wall clocks of varying complexity, almost all made from Australian timbers. Practically all the parts were made by him. Many of his clocks made their way overseas, to Switzerland, the USA, Japan, the UK, and Austria. Will could turn his hand at just about anything. He renovated houses, built a telescope, tackled plumbing and electrical challenges, and built a swimming pool, among many other things. And if he didn't know it, he would find out how to do it. One day, the knobs of his well-known European cooktop broke. To replace them would have cost $200. Will was not impressed. He bought 4 generic knobs at $2 each and spent the next 2 days working out how to adapt them and make them fit. And it paid off. Will had an interest in radio-controlled boats and aircraft from a young age. He built the models himself while he still lived in South Africa. In Australia, he joined the Greensborough and Yarra Valley flying clubs and enjoyed many hours of recreational and pattern flying. Will was a long-term and active member of the Victorian Woodworkers Association, the Studio Woodworkers Association, and the Australian Horological Society. He shared his time and knowledge generously. He served on committees, made components for clocks for the Turret Clock Group, and made his workshop available for people who wanted to learn aspects of the trade. Having his family around him meant the world to Will. He passed on his interest in flying model aircraft and helped the grandchildren with their construction projects, including an impressive array of swords and shields. And an obituary of Will would not be complete without mentioning the love he had for animals in general, and our dogs in particular. He just could not resist their big brown eyes, telling him the cheese tax was due. Will lived a good life. He was a very generous and kind man. He made his dreams come true, creating beautiful objects that have brought many people great joy. Will remains in our hearts and memory forever.